Good evening to everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. We will start our webinar in 1 minute.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. Good morning and good afternoon to all our friends in District 75 and other districts in the world. So, as Division K Director, I officially open this webinar series.
Uh, Toastmaster Ed, you're still on mute, Toastmaster Ed. We can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. Thank you, Toastmaster Nathan, for playing that one. So, once again, good evening, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome to our episode 3. So, now let us welcome our host for tonight. Let's welcome Toastmaster Rafiq Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Division K Director, Toastmaster Edrelin. Before I go ahead, there's something I should have done before all attendees joined in, and I think I missed that part. Our champion guest speaker, Toastmaster DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster Dave Ross, if I can see your video, just to confirm that your video and audio is up and running.
I'm actually here.
There you are. I got you. Okay, great. Excellent. So that relieves off the pressure, thinking that, oh, could there be a technical glitch, which seems to be not the case this time. Thank you so much. All right. So welcome once again to all of you. A small correction. This is episode 2. Although our Division K Director is enthusiastic for all the episodes, so just a correction, it's episode 2. Our volume 3 featuring episode 1 we had 2 days ago, and this is episode 2 featuring yet another world champion, world-class speaker. Now, before I get into introducing the speaker and talk to you more about the speaker, I just want to thank all of you who've been with us through this journey of volume 1, volume 2, and now volume 3. And we could not have been motivated and inspired enough to go ahead with 3 volumes if it wasn't for your support and your attendance for all our episodes. Thank you so much to our lovely attendees. On that note, I would like to now take the opportunity to talk to you about our guest speaker today, who's joined us all the way from the United States of America. Our guest speaker got a flavor of Toastmasters for the very first time in 1971 in California. But back then, our guest speaker was too young to become a part of Toastmasters, so he had to wait all the way until 1976, which was the very first time he became a part of Toastmasters International. And his very first club was in Colorado Springs, and he became a member there. And after that, our guest speaker went on to win the World Championship of Public Speaking in the year 1991. Since then, he has been able to visit clubs in California, Colorado, Texas, Florida. In fact, not visit, he's been a member. He's been a member with clubs in different states in the US, which includes California, Colorado, Texas, Florida, Minnesota, Washington State, Oklahoma, Virginia. And he's also been a member in a Toastmasters club in Germany. Not just that, he has also visited dozens of clubs in locations across the country in the US and around the world. And it was when he was a member with a Toastmasters club named Tinker Toastmasters in Oklahoma that he won the World Championship of Public Speaking in the year 1991. He is currently focused on his business, which helps people to weave excellence in communication and leadership. And not just that, in the current online platform, I think Toastmaster Dave has already been to a lot more events than any other world champion that we have featured earlier. Those of you who missed, Distinguished Toastmaster Dave Ross was featured in a worldwide event which had 500 plus attendees. And we are lucky enough to have this opportunity to host our guest speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give the floor to our world-class speaker, the 1991 World Champion of Public Speaking, Distinguished Toastmaster Dave Ross.
Thank you very much. What a very nice introduction. And it's always nice to be with Toastmasters. Wherever you are in the world, I'm very honored to see you. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. And I'm so very blessed to be here with you. By the way, I was just in January, December and January, I was in the Philippines. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to attend a Toastmasters meeting at that time, but I have been, as was mentioned, to meetings across the globe. And we as Toastmasters are very fortunate to have this organization, to have the focus of this organization, the way it is set up during these very special times. I don't know if you noticed, but the world has gone a little bit crazy lately. It seems like everything is happening at once. Around the globe, there's been severe weather. Around the globe, we've all been told to hide, to quarantine, to isolate. And around the globe, there appears to be unrest and protest. These are very special times. If you are like me, you may be interested in history. And if you study history, you realize this is a very special time. This is the time when we can tell our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and future generations that we went through a global pandemic. We, the whole planet Earth, went through it together. And on a slightly smaller scale, many of us can say that we have gone through a period during this special time where we have seen some unrest, some people protesting injustices. But we know these are special times. What does that mean for Toastmasters? Well, we heard the Toastmaster Promise at the beginning of this meeting, and it says something about us as an organization. It says that we promise to be better, to grow, to improve, and that we promise to help others to grow and to improve. That we help others come into our meeting, that we give from ourselves to the meeting so that we can all improve our leadership and communication skills. That's what we do. It was 1992 at the Toastmasters International Convention in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the United States. Toastmasters from all over the world were in attendance. During this time, a country called South Africa still had a system of apartheid where they separated people based upon their race. There was a Toastmaster, a white South African, who was at that international convention. And here was this white South African who lived in a system that said that he should not communicate or treat me as an equal. And when we met face to face, he said this to me: "Hi, I am John. I'm from South Africa. How are you?" He reached out and brought me in because we were Toastmasters. I have seen Toastmasters from countries that are not friendly to each other embrace as brothers and sisters. I have heard speeches from Toastmasters who had one point of view, and in the same club, another Toastmaster had another point of view. And they listened to each other and could communicate as friends. As was mentioned in my introduction, the first experience I had with Toastmasters was in the fall of 1971. America was going through a great deal of turmoil at that time. There were protests in the streets against war, against discrimination. There were politicians and political points of view that were just totally opposed to each other. But the thing that attracted me to that Toastmasters Club in Sacramento, California, it's now no longer in existence, but it was the 49er Toastmasters Club in Sacramento, California. The thing that attracted me to that group is that in that club, we had people from one point of view and people from another point of view, but yet they came together as one club. I found that some people who had a very strong opinion on one side were best friends to people who had a very strong opinion on another side, because we have a very special gift. We as Toastmasters are empowered to communicate. Now, that does not just mean we are empowered to give great speeches to large audiences. That does not mean that we just tell people what we think. That means that we listen, we evaluate, and we help that speaker who may present an idea that we don't share to learn how to give their message better, to connect with the audience in a richer, more fulfilling ways. I'm reminded of a meeting I had at Tinker Toastmasters, the club that helped me become a world champion. I didn't do it by myself. It was my club that got me there, at Tinker Toastmasters. Now, this was a Toastmasters club that was on a military base. Although I was in the military at the time, most of the people in that club were civilian workers on the base. And because it was a military base, sometimes we had a membership, about 20, 25 members at that time, but sometimes only 5 or 10 could attend because they were busy working. We met at lunchtime, and sometimes people just didn't get their time off at lunch to go to Toastmasters. As it turned out, at that particular meeting, at that particular day, there were about 7 Toastmasters who were there. Of the 7 Toastmasters who were in attendance, 6 of us were Black. 1 in attendance was white. Just turned out that way. And the white Toastmaster who was there was going to give a speech. Now, I'm getting a message that I have to help my computer here, so let me close some things. One moment. Okay, maybe that will make things better. We'll see. All right. I hope you can, can you hear me, Rafiq? Is this good?
Yeah, you're loud and clear and still visible. Go ahead.
Oh, all right, then I'll continue on. So, as I said earlier, the person who had a speech today was white and everybody else in the audience was Black. Now, I'm going to go back in American history a bit, when a lot of people who looked like me were slaves. And they were slaves in a part of the United States in the South. There is a flag in the South that to this day creates emotional reaction, especially among people in the South and especially among people who are Black, like me, and like the 6 other people at this meeting. Well, this gentleman in our club goes up and he takes a picture of that flag and he tapes it to the front of the lectern. Immediately, people are going. Then he gave his speech. And he said that this flag can cause emotional problems. And it's associated with many negative things. He carefully took that flag off and he put another one there. He said this flag actually represents the people of the South during that time. And he said for historical purposes, we can show this flag to represent the history and not show the other one that has so many negative things. At the end of his speech, he got rousing applause, a great evaluation, and thanks for sharing that point of view. I've never heard something like that so cleverly and eloquently presented anywhere else but in a Toastmaster club. Because we have a special gift. Because you have a special gift. You, Toastmaster, wherever you are on planet Earth, you have a special gift. You know how to present an idea, a feeling, a thought, a story in a way that people will listen and grow. And you, Toastmaster, have a special gift that allows you to listen objectively without coming to a hard conclusion before you hear the speech, to learn and grow and connect. Can I share my screen with some people?
Sure, you can go ahead. Just a second. Let me see if it's allowed here. Okay. Nathan, can you allow screen sharing, please? Our admin.
Yes, please try to share your screen as I make
Go
you
ahead,
a host.
Okay. All right, great. I'm going to share something here. I can get this to work.
Yeah, we see it.
All right, let me go to the beginning. Okay. Now, if you've been watching the news, you probably think American streets look like this right now, everywhere. And they don't, but there are protests. Now, this is a Black Lives Matter rally. And you see the arrow pointing there. Let me see if I can bring that in a little bit closer. There's a child with a megaphone. Okay, and this is the rally. This is not a violent event. This is a peaceful protest, putting forward an idea of promoting human rights. Now let's look at this kid with the megaphone again. That's my grandson. That is my grandson. Because he said, and his words to those thousands of people who were there was that everyone deserves respect, no matter who you are or what you look like. This is the gift that we as Toastmasters have, to share an idea, to communicate and connect. Now, and to bring light to our perspective, what we really see, what's going on. So what do you see in your communities, in your neighborhood, in your country, in your region of the world? And how does what you see affect your opinion, your life, your future, your employment, your ability to connect with others? During this special time, we have been challenged with a deadly virus. And we've heard a lot of things said about what's going on. I know you've seen pictures of people in America walking on the beach and acting like there was no virus at all. I teach English to children in China online. And I saw firsthand the virus early on, how it affected their lives. I've even taught a class to a student in a hospital while he was recovering. But all these students saw on their news was Americans not wearing masks, getting together. And I had more than one student at the end of the class hold up the mask and try to say, make sure you wear this, because they thought no Americans were wearing masks. Because the image they had didn't reflect my life. It reflected what that particular television image showed at that moment. How many times have we, no matter where we are, seen a news report that we said, that's not quite the whole story. That's not the whole image. Or here's one, I was visiting in the Philippines and a typhoon came through the Philippines at that time. It did very minimal effect where I was in Manila. But the news report made it look like all of the Philippines was under 3 meters of water. And people, and I suddenly got messages from my family. My mother wanted to know if I was all right. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm fine. What's going on? Because they didn't have the right picture, the perspective that I was experiencing. You have the gift to share that. Not just in your clubs, but in your communities, in your social groups, in your communities of your faith, in communities of your city, in your schools, in your businesses. You have a gift to enlighten others. Now, I have another image I want to share, and this is, let's see if I can get to the right picture here. Oops. It's not working. All right, 1 second. Let me try that again. Okay. Let me try this. Okay, there we go. It's working now. All right. I love this image. It conjures a picture of focus and tranquility. Now, this is the image of a Toastmasters meeting after the coronavirus. But when this happened to us, and when we found ourselves in issues of strife, we still found a way to connect. In fact, here's another thing about us as Toastmasters. We find a way to connect. Right now, there are people from various countries all over the globe coming in together as Toastmasters. I have been very blessed to travel around the world from right here and visit Toastmasters across the globe. I have a friend, Rich Hopkins, who is trying to visit every district in Toastmasters. I wish I could have mentioned the districts he hasn't been to yet. There are about 5 of them left, and he wants to visit every one as we are visiting now on Zoom, because this is a way that we can come together. We as Toastmasters seek an audience. We can't talk to an empty room. We have to connect. And because that's who we are, that's basic to what we do, we have used Zoom in ways that I think more effective than any other organization. Some businesses have done this. They've connected online to do business. But what organization has connected in the way that we have to share ideas and thoughts, viewpoints, to make new friends? We have a special gift in these special times. So now that I've talked a bit about our special gift, I'd like to talk a little bit about ways to make it more effective, if that's okay. Yeah, okay. So I since I can't see your protest, I'll just continue. Among the ways that we can make this gift in this environment more effective is to realize that we're no longer on a stage, that you have to find ways to get the same level of connection and enthusiasm that you have in a club meeting with the Zoom. And here are just a couple things that I've noticed that sometimes can enhance your communication skills. We've all seen times where people are looking down at their computer rather than looking up at the camera. Practice talking to the camera, and practice talking to the camera as if you're talking to one person. That will bring the audience, no matter how many, no matter where they are, closer in. And this is also very good practice to transfer for when we can start meeting larger numbers in person again. Because when you talk to individual audience members, and notice I said when you talk to them, not at them, not giving them a speech over their head, but talk to them, you're establishing a connection. And when you're speaking to a live audience, they see the expressions on your face, they hear the tone in your voice, they can feel the purpose of your gestures, and they react. They close in, they smile, they move back, they cross their arms, they nod their head, they're speaking to you. You're having a communication with your audience. In other words, it's not a broadcast, but it's coming back at you. So the challenge in this environment is to simulate the same sort of communication. Now, I hope I've done that. I hope by asking questions, by pausing, it gives the illusion that we are having a one-on-one conversation. And the one-on-one conversation is the ideal effect that we want to have when we speak as Toastmasters, whether it's in person or on Zoom. The other thing is watch your gestures and choose your background. I'm going to change my background if my computer will let me here just a moment. All right, this is my actual background. You can see the American flag and the Chinese flag behind me because just before I came here, I was teaching English. This is a lion to kids in China. So think about your background. I think most people have caught on by now that a simple, non-confusing background can help. Now, I've chose this for us, but you can also choose a variety of things to indicate that you're part of that particular group or audience. That doesn't distract, but allows them to say, I'm ready for this particular event. Perhaps you're talking about living a life of peace and tranquility. Or maybe there's not so happy times. But find something that works to add to your message. A lot of times I will use, this is my own personal brand, I will use a simple image. But when I talk to Toastmasters, I like the Toastmasters logo. So think about your background, think about your lighting. Again, make sure that it's in your face. One of the problems I have is that you can see reflections off my glasses. I would take them off, but I have problems seeing things. So you may have to play with it a bit to reduce that sort of thing. So again, the image, how you look, is very important to communicating and connecting. And one thing I have done, if people have seen me in more than one Zoom, they've noticed I've always had a bow tie. Now, I've only done that during the Corona crisis because I thought it would be fun to see how many of these images, there you go, how many bow ties, how often I could be seen wearing a bow tie. But think again, I belong to a Toastmasters club, and we've been meeting just like this on Zoom since the beginning of the quarantine. And the first meeting, people were very well dressed. And by now, they're coming in their robes and t-shirts. They're getting very relaxed. That's okay. But if you're speaking, pay attention to how you look, because this world, this is it. This is what people see. So how you present yourself will have an effect on your message. Now, all of those things I told you are superficial. Believe it or not, in my opinion, Those are not the most important things. Those are not the most important things. Yes, it is important to use vocal variety and to pause. And yes, it's important to have gestures that mean something. Excuse me. And yes, it is important to have a background and to have that great eye contact. Those are important, but they mean nothing. They mean nothing if you don't remember this one thing. Every great speech is about the same thing. Every great speech, every speech that you've ever heard that moved you, whether it was delivered by a president or a priest, whether it was delivered by your friend to a group, or something you saw on a recording, a historical presentation, every great speech was about the audience. I don't care what you're talking about. I don't care if you're giving an icebreaker. I don't care whatever it is. It's about the audience. And that's a fundamental thing to remember. Sometimes we write these speeches and we think, boy, they're going to be really impressed with me. Hopefully, they'll be impressed and moved by the message because you have given a speech that means something to the audience. Connecting to the audience. It has no value if it's not valuable to the audience. It has no meaning unless it means something to the audience. If you are giving a speech that is all about you and for you, my suggestion is that you only give speeches in a very small room to yourself. Because unless there's value that the audience can take away, then there's no value to them listening. Let me share a thought with you. Years ago, I heard two bosses deliver the same message. They had two organizations that worked together, and in many ways they were identical. Two bosses delivered the same message, and it was a difficult message. This message that you'd have to work harder and longer, and no, there was no raise involved. There was no increase in pay. They both told their people, you have to work harder and longer. There's no more pay involved, but we have to do that in order for our business to survive. One boss delivered the message, and all of the people were angry. The boss is horrible. The other boss delivered that same message, and all the people said, all right, we're going to stand up to the challenge. We're going to get it done. We're going to make it happen. Because one boss was telling them what they had to do. The other boss was saying, this is what we have to do. Same message, told from a totally different perspective. One boss thought he had to just tell them stuff, what they had to do, because he was the boss. Okay, that works. Except it doesn't always work when things are really bad. The other boss said, I'm in it with you. Because he was thinking, how will this message best be taken in by the audience? How can we grow from this? Where can we go from this? When you give your speeches in the club, think first about the audience. Think of ways, how can they gain from it? How can they remember it best? What's in it for them? The 1987 world champion of public speaking, Harold Patterson, is also in Oklahoma. And one of the many wise things, he's always saying wise things. He is just a very wise and good man. But one of the many wise things he said about public speaking and competing, he said when he started entering contests, he learned very fast that you lose a lot or you don't win a lot. And he started to think, well, why do I do this? And he realized that winning doesn't always mean taking home the trophy. It's great when it does, but it's also wonderful when you give a speech and someone in the audience, just one person in the audience comes up to you and said, thank you. That speech meant a lot to me. I know many of us have given a speech at one time or another and had someone come up and say, thank you for saying that. I needed to hear that. Thank you. That was the message I can relate to. Yes, thank you so much for your speech. Now, it's easy for somebody who has won the World Championship of Public Speaking to say that. But I think in many ways, that's more valuable than any trophy. Just recently, I heard a young person who wasn't even alive when I won the World Championship give me one of the kindest compliments when he said, that speech meant a lot to me. It helped change my life. He said, thank you for something that I said before he was born. I want to tell you, that touched me so much because it connected with the audience. And yes, all those things are important that I've mentioned before. But if you can have the spirit and the idea of your first priority is to bring value to whoever hears your speech, you will always be a champion. Doesn't matter what any judges say. Doesn't matter. You will always be a champion. Okay. Now, I didn't talk about this before, but I wanted to know if there are any, first of all, I want to make sure I'm on time here. I don't have a timer. And I see it.
Yeah, you are on time, Dave. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I wanted to know if we had we could open up now for questions.
Yeah, that's the format actually. Once our guest speaker speaks, we open the chat box, and once we see the questions, we let the attendees ask you the question directly.
Okay, so, great. Because again, sorry about the time. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dave. I've heard you before. In fact, I've heard you multiple times, and I would like to borrow something which you said, and I would like to quote that once again. Your speech from 1991, I still believe that it's still fresh. And you look at it, and you don't say that you know what, this was speech way back in time. It is still fresh, and it still has the same impact. And I think that's the power of a powerful speaker, a powerful message, and a powerful speech. Thank you so much for that, distinguished Toastmaster Dave Ross. We will now kick off the Q&A session by inviting our first reactor, who will give a feedback about the session, about the talk that we just heard, and kickstart the Q&A session with the first question. To do so, let me now invite the Division K Director-elect, Toastmaster Joy Fair, to please help us by being our reactor.
Thank you.
It's really a privileged evening because it's an honor to listen to our world champion once again. And it made me realize how lucky I am being a Toastmaster, because amidst this crisis, we are gifted and we are anointed with healing words. And we can be a blessing to others in many ways that we can imagine. And whenever we see world champions, we always perceive that it's really difficult to be like them, or it's really an unreachable, dream. But the very moment that you uttered that, whenever your purpose is to add value to your audience, you will always be a champion. And right now, I am a champion because as a teacher, I've been doing that for many, many years. And you greatly inspired me because more than preparing for a speech, more than preparing for your background and how you look, how you communicate, it's about the meaning. It's about the value that you will add to your audience, that you will take something really valuable after your speech. And with that, I'm greatly inspired. I'm sure the rest of the audience are greatly inspired by your message. That it's really acknowledgement and the feeling of privilege that as a Toastmasters, as a member of Toastmaster International, we have the mission, we have this ministry of bringing those healing words to this a little bit sick world that we are in right now. Thank you, Toastmaster Dave. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Very kind.
Right. Toastmaster Joy, do you have any question for Toastmaster Dave?
Question. I have so many questions actually, because this very short period that we listen to a champion, and then just few minutes and you get really overwhelmed by many wisdom nuggets of ideas and the like. How do you sustain the fuel? How do you sustain the fuel of bringing the good news, bringing the value to your audience? How do you do that?
I am fed by the audience. Their presence, their energy, it really comes back to me. That's why this particular way of communication is very hard for me at this time. So that is something that gives me value by the audience itself. But the other thing that inspires me to stay in Toastmasters, and I'm going to go to Toastmasters meetings until I drop, is I love hearing speeches. I love to see the icebreaker the first time they speak, and then I love to watch them later on as they grow. I love that. That is just such a joy. So that for me is what I feed off of. And another thing, as a friend of mine calls it, Toastmasters University, because I can hear speeches about subjects and topics I didn't know anything about. Sometimes I've learned to get an interest for it. I learned to get an interest in opera because I went to a Toastmasters meeting. I learned a lot about oil drilling here in Oklahoma. I never would have learned that. So all those things feed me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Joy Fair, and thank you, DTM Dave. All right, we've got another question coming in, but before that, I would like to take this privilege of being the host and ask you a question. So I'm going to make use of this opportunity. I've heard this before, something which you quoted, DTM Dave, and I've heard this coming in from also another world-class speaker, and I would quote that again. You said, don't speak at your audience, speak to them. Now, can you tell us an example of speaking at them and to them so we can differentiate both?
All right. So here I am speaking at an audience. I'm not necessarily making direct eye contact. I'm just scanning the audience because my words are so profound. You will be impressed with me because these are my words. Okay. It's kind of an exaggeration. Another way you speak at an audience is when you memorize a speech word for word and there's no change in your face or inflection. That responds to the audience member. Okay. And sometimes you can act and you can elicit a reflection. There's a difference. My brother is an actor. He belongs to a very exclusive actors workshop where very many famous actors have to audition to get in. Some of the famous actors don't get in, but my brother got in. He has a master's in fine arts in acting and directing. And we talk about the difference between speaking and acting a lot. Of course, we're brothers, so we argue. So, but he says, and what he does is he creates an environment that people are looking into. When you act, you create a world that people are looking into. And you're watching the world. You're not a participant in that world. You're an observer. You're watching. Some speeches make the audience an observer, which is okay. It's providing a message, but it's not, as I see the ideal speech, is where this audience is a participant in a very subtle way to the value of the speech. I'm trying to make a connection with you. I'm not trying to make a connection to you. I want to create an experience that says that you as an individual in my audience, whether there's one in the audience or 1,000 in the audience, I want every individual to feel they've had a one-on-one conversation with me. That not only have they heard my words, they know that I have felt their reaction to my words.
Thank you.
No, next question.
Rafiq, we can't hear you.
All right. Yeah.
Thank
Sorry for that. I'm going to take a question from the audience now. We have Toastmaster Jason, Toastmaster Jason Briman, who would like to ask a question. Please go ahead and unmute yourself, Toastmaster Jason.
Thank you, Champ Rafiq, and thank you, Dave, for your sharing tonight. Toastmasters is where leaders are made.
Yes.
But we have also been taught, although maybe it's unwritten, to be apolitical and be neutral. But in the advent of the recent developments and circumstances, locally, globally, I think there's a need to go beyond what we have been taught in Toastmasters to be apolitical. So what do you think, and how do you think should we do differently, both as public speakers, members of Toastmasters, and even as an organization, to go beyond being apolitical and be really the leaders that we need to be in our markets, in our countries, and globally? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a powerful question. A powerful question. And one of those things that I have been working with, wrestling with quite a bit. I'll give you two examples. One is with a Toastmaster. In fact, he was a past international director, and we were disagreeing on when we should come out of quarantine. I'm saying I'm going to stay in quarantine for a long time. I'm going to hide out from this virus because I don't want to take the risk. But here's what he shared with me, and these are very good points. He said, you know, it's easy for some people who are in a financial position where they can do that. And yeah, fortunately for me, I teach online, I do a lot of things online, so I can work and not go out of my house. So it's easy for me to say that. A lot of people can't. They can't pay the bills. They have to take the risk. And I said, but it's dangerous. And he said, yes, I know it's dangerous. And he's also former military like me. And he said, you know, I have risked my life for this country before. And yes, I am in a high risk position, but I will wear masks, I will wear gloves, I will wash my hands, I will make sure not to spread it to anyone else if I get it, and I won't try my best not to get it myself, but I'm willing to take that risk for what I think is the good of my country. Now, I still am going to hide out, and he's still going to go to work, but I gain such respect not only for his idea, but for him. He's saying, I know this is a risk, but it's what I am willing to do. Not everybody can do that. And I think he understood my point of view, that my concern is that when we come out too soon, people forget their social distancing, they stop wearing the mask, things happen, and then we'll have an economic crisis as well as a medical crisis worse than before. I'm concerned about that. And I think he understands that as well. So here's what I think we as Toastmasters should do. Seek non-confrontational ways to listen to each other. Listen. This is what we do. That's part of our superpower as Toastmasters. We listen. And don't talk to try to convince somebody. Listen and speak to understand and to be understood. Perhaps it was because he was a Toastmaster that he was so able to eloquently express himself. And perhaps it was my Toastmasters training that I was so able to understand that point of view. It's very serious. And I don't think either way is necessarily right or wrong, the best or whatever. Mine is very cautious. His is very honest and direct. But we can share that as Toastmasters without being confrontational. I'll tell you something else. Many of you have heard the term Black Lives Matter. And yes, all lives matter. That seems very common. A friend of mine said, well, that's ridiculous. Why would you say Black Lives Matter? All lives matter. You don't even have to say that. And I said to him, sadly, you are absolutely right. We should not have to, but sadly, with some people, in some places, we do. One of my favorite places on planet Earth is Singapore. I love Singapore. It is just, to me, it's the perfect community. It's clean, people are polite, and if you're not, you get in trouble. People are, and their airport is the most magnificent. Their airports, I understand there's another one, I've only been in one, but their airports are the most magnificent I've ever been in. They're wonderful places. So I'm in this wonderful place surrounded by all these wonderful people at the Singapore airport. And I happen to be traveling through the airport with a group of people. In this case, I am the only Black person with this group at the Singapore airport. Everybody, again, is treating me wonderful. I've had the best McDonald's meal ever at the Singapore airport. It's great. But there's one person, I don't know his position, but he was some sort of security guard who looked at me and non-verbally told me that he was watching me. He did something like this to me because I didn't look like the other people in the airport. Now, had he been a Toastmaster, he might have thought, I don't know that person, but maybe any negative thing that I've heard about that person is false. Maybe I could look at him another way. So I think, again, by example within our clubs, we have a very diverse club. I belong to a very diverse club in Oklahoma. Here we are in Oklahoma, and I think I counted people were born in 4 different countries in the world in that one club. So we have a chance to communicate, but listen not to be confrontational. Speak not to be confrontational. Listen to understand, and speak to be understood.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Toastmaster Jason, and thank you, DTM Dave. DTM Dave, I've got now a series of questions coming in, and I've been asked to keep the identity anonymous of the Toastmaster asking it. Probably your secret admirer, I don't know. Or probably someone is trying to get you to answer questions which you would normally not answer, probably.
Okay.
All right, and then get away with it probably. So here are the questions. Do you want to hear all of them, or I'll take one by one? I'll take the most, which I think is the most important one. Let me go with this.
Okay, good. Then it's all on you. It's your
Yeah.
fault.
I'll start with this. And the question goes something like this. Dave, if you can answer this, he says, has there been a world champion who won with a speech that talked about polarizing issues?
Oh, directly, indirectly, I think almost all of the speeches kind of hint at that. They talk about polarizing issues in some way. But for instance, a world champion speech, a winning speech, I off the top of my head, I can't think of. But there was a semifinal speech that was courageous. It was delivered by a Filipina. It was delivered by a transsexual Filipina. Wow. She was not born as a woman. She's a very beautiful woman. She was born as a boy. But she talked about the challenges she's had with people accepting her for who she said she is. That was a courageous speech, beautiful speech. And that was one that I heard that was one of those challenging ones. Now, I think she came in second in the semifinal round and did not go to the finals.
Okay. All right. Someone just commented and said to me that particular contestant was from Thailand.
Yes, she was from Thailand, but she was born in the Philippines, and now she's in America. So, I happen to know her. So, but yes.
So there are people who know probably the same information. All right, I'm going to go with the next question. Although before I go to the next question, Dave, just so I know, maybe, I'm not so, how do I say, I do not have that much knowledge, I guess. When we say polarizing issues, what are we talking about here?
We're talking about where there's, polarizing issues where there's one way or the other. Whether it's go to work or stay home.
Okay, I got that right now.
Okay.
All right, there's another one here. The question says, Dave, with the explosion of online meetings spurring more honest conversations about things that happen around us. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Will the explosion of online meetings spur more honest conversations about things that happen around us?
I hope so. I really hope so. Because,
right.
We all know that we hear different things from different points of view. And I hope so.
Okay, and this one is I think this is very apt for this particular environment that we are in right now. The question goes like this, Dave, what are your expectations of this year's World Championship of Public Speaking, the first ever to be conducted online?
I have two expectations. First one is expect problems. Expect problems. The internet will go in and out somewhere. I just expect problems and we'll get around. But the second thing, I think it's a chance. It's a chance for us to hear some really powerful speeches that will relate to all of us in a very personal way. Those are my two expectations.
Excellent. Right, now we've got a not anonymous a question coming in. This one coming in from Toastmaster Marites Abu Habil. Toastmaster Marites, please unmute yourself. You can direct your question to DTM Dave.
Hello, Toastmaster Dave. My question is, how do you live your Toastmasters life to the fullest all through these years?
Okay, I can look at that question two ways. You are so old, Dave. How do you keep it going? That's one side. And the other one is, what are some ways to enjoy it the most? Well, yes, I've been in Toastmasters and around Toastmasters a long time. And it fuels me. It gives me great spirit and momentum. It's just wonderful. I recently had some a dear Toastmaster friend of mine die from COVID-19, who was actually older than me. And I was thinking about all the lives he touched with his speeches, and he was a district governor, and he did so much for so many people. I hope that I can leave a legacy half as great as this man. And so that's one of my motivations. And the other thing is, I learned something from every Toastmaster meeting I've attended. So obviously I had a lot to learn since I've been going to a lot of them. But it's always wonderful, the people you meet, the friends you make. You know, when I visit other places, other countries, I try to attend a Toastmasters meeting. Sometimes that's not always possible, but when I do, it always makes the visit special.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Toastmaster Emeritus. We've got another question coming in. I would like to give the opportunity to a representative from Greece, District 109, Toastmaster Panos Kurel. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Toastmaster Panos.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor, Rafik, and thank you, Dave. It's wonderful for you to know that your message reaches all the way out to Greece and the Philippines, and I'm sure that right now we're global. And that is definitely an opportunity for me personally to get to listen to you in real time. The second thing I'm very thankful for is I'm thankful to you for centralizing the core of your message today being about our service to others, as I understand it. We serve others through our speeches, and the value of this as an understanding cannot be overstated. And this brings us to my question to you and your experience. Now, I understand that an ideal condition for a speech to be well received and reflected upon is for the speech to be valuable and appealing. I see the appeal as the form of the speech, where in appeal, the emphasis is on the form, but in the value, the emphasis is in the substance. So now I want to pass the ball to you and listen to you in your own words. How do you strike a balance between those two to make sure that they work with each other towards a speech that is both appealing and valuable to your audience at the same time? Thank you so much, Dave. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I am honored by your presence. This is, I think, a key to putting that speech forward, making it something, again, valuable. I think valuable and palatable. If you've ever been forced to eat something that you didn't want to eat as a small child, it was very valuable, but not something I wanted to eat. So you have to make it interesting. You have to make it tasty. You have to make it flavorful. So the best way to do that is to connect with the audience with a story that will connect with them. I think you'll hear, if you look at any of the world champion speeches over the last 100 years, we're almost 100 years old. The competition isn't quite that old, but Toastmasters is coming up to its 100th birthday. The speeches we remember had a story connected to it. Now, I will tell you why we remember stories, because stories create pictures in our mind. We remember pictures faster and easier than we remember words. If you can create a mental picture in your audience that relates to them, that illustrates the value of the speech, it will become more memorable. It will become more memorable because that is what you see. I talked today about communicating, and I used a lot of gestures to create a visual picture about the size of the room and then talking to you and not talking to the computer. Those are visual things to make it memorable. But I could have also have given a verbal picture. I could have said something like this. Imagine that you went to hear somebody speak and that person looked at everybody in the eye but you, how would you feel? Now, if you're looking at your computer, you're looking at everybody else in the eye but you, and that's everyone. So looking at the camera is very important. So creating those pictures help make the speech more memorable and more valuable.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Toastmaster Panos from Greece. Okay, Dave, again, I'm getting questions from your anonymous admirers.
Nobody wants to admit liking me, I understand.
Yeah, so it's probably people you brought along from the US. All right. So you've got people probably attending from US, your admirers who told you that all lives matter and not just Black lives. I think it's one of them.
Yeah.
All right. The question goes like this. Dave, please comment on this. How can I make sure that I will not alienate my audience if I talk about current social events?
Okay. There is no way to make sure. There is no guarantee. But a way to reduce the odds is to first always be honest. Speak in a way that lets people know that you've heard the point of view. I'll give you the example I mentioned earlier when they had what's called a Confederate flag. That speaker who did that at the Toastmaster meeting. Remember, he was the only white person in the room, and he put a Confederate flag that really makes Black people angry. He just very casually put it up there and started talking. But we knew him, first of all. He was our friend. That helped. We already had the relationship. But the thing that really helped was he said, this flag, although it's associated with Southern life, it also has negative things. He listed all the negative things. He admitted these things. Then he carefully removed it. He didn't crumple it up. He didn't set it on fire, but he did carefully remove it and he put another flag that didn't create that emotional feeling. So that's an example. Acknowledge it. The other thing is use humor. Use humor. And don't just tell a joke and then jump into it, but use humor that has a purpose in the speech that advances the concept a little further. I recently used humor, and I was talking about, oddly enough, racial issues. I talked about a past president of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt. And I said, Teddy Roosevelt was president at that time, and he was white. And I think he always was white. In fact, I bet if you brought up his body, he'd still be white. And Booker T. Washington, who was Black. And oh yeah, he's probably still Black too. Anyway, and I had pictures of both of them on a PowerPoint slide and talked about their relationship that they had years and years ago. So the humor was part of talking about, they knew I was going to mention things about racial differences, but they also knew that I wasn't going to challenge their thought, even though I did get very sensitive. So that's another thing. Don't take yourself too seriously. Do not give a speech that starts out with, anybody who doesn't agree with me is a jerk. Okay, so now that I've got your attention, I'm going to tell you the way it should be. That's probably not the best way to go. But yes, try to again, speak to be understood, but let the audience know that you've heard them. Abraham Lincoln, another past president of the United States, was noted for, when he was a lawyer, he would present the opposing point of view. He would talk about the other side, and sometimes he would present their case better than they did. But then he would very carefully take it apart piece by piece. Well, you can do the same thing without necessarily taking it apart, but showing that you respect the point of view, that you heard it.
True.
Next question.
All right. Again, another anonymous question, and this one goes something like this. Dave, apart from the fact that you cannot compete anymore, what are your other frustrations as a world champion?
Okay, I will share one frustration that I have. And this is a horrible thing to admit because it goes against what I've said about listening to be understood and not confronting people. But I recently saw something on a Toastmaster page somewhere in the world about how to win the world championship of public speaking. And he suggested things that I thought were not only wrong, but in my opinion, did not express the highest values of Toastmasters about how to win. Something like, flirt with DTMs. What? Because DTMs are often the judges. Compliment the potential judges. He didn't say anything about giving the right type of speech, didn't tell you anything about structure, didn't say anything. And oh, by the way, this individual has never even won a district contest. So how does he know about becoming a world champion? I don't know. That's one of my frustrations. There are a lot of people who offer formulas and suggestions. They say the last champions said happy 5 times. So you should say happy and then end it with glad, or something. That's a frustration I have. And that's because I'm a grumpy old man. And that's what happens when you become a grumpy old man. Okay.
Right. All right. Thank you for that answer. We've got another one. I'm going to quickly run through and see which one I can. All right. Again, it's anonymous. It says, how do we measure the internationalness of an international speech?
Ooh. I have a short answer for that. I don't know. But I also have a long answer for that. A way to do that is to acknowledge a commonality. Now we can acknowledge we all are dealing with a single virus, something so small we can't see, but yet it has covered the whole world. That might be an example of a more international type presentation. But the other thing is that I should not give as an international speech, a speech that talks about the best ways to climb the Rocky Mountains, because the Rocky Mountains are in North America, the United States and Canada. I should not give a speech about going in the Great Lakes, because again, they're in North America, the United States and Canada. I should probably talk about the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean, or traveling, comparing the Rocky Mountains to the Himalayas or something. So I think that makes a speech more international, how you reflect geography and politics carefully to make it a more international type presentation. But the best way is to talk about those things that are universal. Family, love, fear, hope, those things that really and truly connect us all.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. Dave, I have my own question because I'm thinking now from the perspective of contest, and I have one question in my mind. Over the years, I've heard my fellow members, club coaches, mentors tell me this. I'll take an example. Ryan Avery, for example, talked about trust. Trust was the concept in his speech.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean that because Ryan used trust and he became a world champion, the same concept cannot be used ever again?
No, what it means is if you use it again, it is totally fresh and new. And I have seen speakers actually have different subjects, but they tried to, it was clear that they were mimicking a recent champion's style. And it kind of had not as successful results. The results were not quite, I think, what the speaker wanted. And this is my bias. This is Dave Ross. This is not necessarily the absolute truth, but this is the truth as I see it. The more creative your speech, the more original the speech, the better. Now, if you have something to add to trust that builds upon or conflicts with what Ryan Avery says, and you can present it in a way that makes me forget that Ryan Avery ever walked the earth, okay, that'd be hard to do. He's pretty darn good. But anyway, but forget his speech anyway, then do it. That is a winning formula because it is totally new and fresh. But again, think about the audience, which is the key. I've already heard Ryan Avery. I'm in the audience and I might be a judge. So you're giving me Ryan Avery's speech? I'll give you an example. Zig Ziglar, one of his taglines, who's a very famous speaker, especially here in America, Zig Ziglar would often end his speeches with, I will see you at the top. I went to a program where somebody was paid to speak, and he ended his presentation with, I will see you at the top. When he said that, I totally forgot everything else he said, because he could have ended his presentation with something original. Be original. You can never go wrong being you. If you try to be someone else, you'll just be a poor copy.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. I'm going to just quickly read out a few lovely messages coming in from our lovely audience for you. So if you allow me, I'll be very quick, Dave. One coming in here from Marites, who also happened to ask you a question. She says, DTM Dave Ross, such a soulful and candid speech. As you said, every great speech was about the audience. Listen and speak to understand and to be understood. Thank you for the nuggets of wisdom. Indeed, wisdom grows with experience.
Oh, thank you. I guess that's for calling me old, huh?
You've got another one coming in. This is Toastmaster Jason. He says, thanks, Dave, for your honest response. Differences in opinion does not have to be polarizing. As communication, we should be honest as speakers and respectful listeners as well.
Thank you.
You've got another one coming in from, there's another anonymous message. It says here, thank you, Ross. It's great having you and listening to your years of wisdom. So a lot of wonderful messages, Dave. And I think it's always a pleasure having Toastmasters who have been there and continue to be in Toastmasters for so long. And this is so inspirational because I have seen speakers who come with a goal, with an objective, and once that is done, you don't see them anymore.
Yes.
I have seen speakers whom we have termed them, or rather we have captioned them as contest season speakers.
Yeah.
Who come once a year for the contest season, and as soon as they lose, they go back, and you see them back again at the contest season. So this is, I think, a great inspiration for all upcoming speakers, all those speakers who spend several months or years in Toastmasters, who think that they've achieved the distinguished Toastmaster status, or who think that I've already become the district director, and they say, you know what, I need to pack up my bags. You're a great inspiration for all of us, Dave. You have been in the race, you've always been in it, and you're never coming out of it because you are always leading the race. And that's what I love about having you as a guest speaker here, Toastmaster Dave. Thank you so much. I would now like to give you the control to leave us with your closing remarks, something for us to take home, and look forward to having you here one more time. And I think it was unfortunate for us that you were there in Philippines in December and we could not invite you. Had I known you before, I would have definitely contacted you and brought you home to one of our events in Philippines, up close and personal.
Well, it was just the situation I was in. Trust me, had I had greater flexibility with my time, I would have come with no invitation. With no invitation, I would have come to visit one of my friends in the Philippines. I love. By the way, I've had some really great meetings in the Philippines. I've met some really great Toastmasters there, so it's really a great experience. And I'm sorry that I didn't attend a single meeting while I was there. But so holidays, visiting friends and family, you know how it goes. So that's what happens. But anyway, let me just share again just one thing. And that's the unbelievable, limitless future of Toastmasters. Years ago, I started a club. I wanted a club that would meet on Monday mornings, and I wanted it to be a community club. So I decided I'd start it myself. Every day I went to this restaurant. They let me meet in the back room, or every day, every week, I would go to this restaurant, meet in the back room, and wait for somebody to attend. I put out ads all over the internet, ads in supermarkets, at the post office, all these places come to Toastmasters. So what would happen would be I would order breakfast, eat breakfast by myself, and go home. I did that for about 2 months, every week, 2 months. Then one day, 4 women walked in at the same time. We heard about this Toastmasters Club, and we want to join. And I said, great. All right, I am the president. I'm the acting president now. And I said, you're the vice president of education. You're the vice president of membership. You're vice president of public relations. We have a club. And we built a club that existed for a number of years. But what was interesting, the woman I told she was the vice president of education, she had never spoken anywhere outside of her house before. This was her first opportunity to step outside of her house and do something in the community. She goes home to her husband. She's so excited. She said, guess what? Her husband said, what? Said, I just joined Toastmasters. He said, great, sweetheart. And she said, and guess what? What? She said, I am the vice president of education. And he said, that's wonderful. What's the vice president of education? And she said, I don't know. But she turned out to be a great vice president of education. Not only that, today she's a DTM. Not only that, she's a past district director. Not only that, she is a professional public speaker. Not only that, the governor of her state, I'm not talking Toastmasters, I mean talking about the elected governor of her state, considered her for his staff. He didn't select her, but he considered her and may consider her in the future for other positions because she is very active in the community. Toastmasters opened that up for her. But more importantly, Toastmasters opens that up for you. And Toastmasters opens that up for the world. Realize that we have a very special gift, and these are very special times. I thank you for being a Toastmaster, and I thank you for inviting me into your community. It's great to be in the Philippines again. Hopefully I'll get back there in person soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, distinguished Toastmaster Dave Ross, yet again, giving us all those tips which are current for all of us, although you've been learning this over these years that you've been in Toastmasters. Thank you so much for that. All right, this brings us to the part of the session now where we will tell you a little bit about our next episode, episode number 3. And I will relate back to what distinguished Toastmaster Dave Ross said. It was just coincidental or probably inspirational enough for us to think about it, which is we will be featuring the 1987 world champion of public speaking, Toastmaster Harold Patterson. That will be our episode number 3, which will happen on the 14th, same time. And we'll definitely be posting our links and details on the Facebook page of Division K District 75, also on the Toastmasters International Facebook page, or you can connect on the Division K Director Toastmaster Adrelin's Facebook page or mine, and you will see the details for the event. So that's just excellent, and it's just so coincidental that Dave referred to Harold Patterson, and we will be having Harold Patterson with us. So what better way to connect by going back in the history of the world champions? So you thought 1991 was the furthest we could go, but no, we have gone further, and we're bringing Harold Patterson. So looking forward to that. Yes, Dave, go ahead. You had something to say.
I just want to say Harold Patterson is the best. He's just a fine man. Not only is he an outstanding speaker, he's a fine man. And you can tell him I said so.
Oh, right. And it would be probably way too interesting for us, or probably we will be so excited if you will be attending with us too, Dave. So you
I
can
will-
have first-hand experience. Okay. On that note, I would now like to thank all of you, our lovely audience, who've always been lovely throughout our series, throughout our volumes of bringing to you 10 years of Toastmasters wisdom, we thought, and then we said more years of Toastmasters wisdom, because it's not just 10 years anymore. We've expanded over 30 years of Toastmasters wisdom and extended it to you to learn from them. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all and thank our Division K director. Back to you, the Division K director, Toastmaster Edwin.
Toastmaster Rafiq.
Okay, so I'm the one doing it. All right, so we will go
Yes.
with on the count of 3. Let me see your smiles and your thumbs. Okay, so that will, just a moment, we've got 2 screens. Okay, excellent. There goes screen number 1. All right, and now going to screen number 2. Thank you. And we've got lovely pictures. Thank you so much.